All right, we could talk about this a long time, but let's move on to the Fed. Again, the president took a lot of questions. He was asked about Powell and whether this Republicans in the House are talking about investigating Powell for lying to Congress. And the president was asked how he felt about that. Here he is, number 7 on Jay Powell.
He's terrible. I think, look, we're paying, I call him too late. T-O-O, too late. Like Too Tall Jones for the Dallas Cowboys, right? Too late. He's always late. But he wasn't late with Biden before the election. He was cutting him like crazy. It didn't help too much, did it? But he was cutting him like crazy before the election with Kamala and Biden. He was trying to get them in, I guess. I don't know. He was recommended by somebody that worked for me. I like you better.
I think he's looking at Scott Bessent there. So a couple things on the Fed. First of all, what do you think the president's goal is now? Is he trying to get Powell to quit? Is he trying to just shift blame? Like, what's his actual play here by saying Powell's horrible, he should go?
He's probably trying to bully him into lower rates, right? I mean, job owning Fed chairs to get lower rates is this whole idea that never happens is really only a fiction of the last 5, 6 presidents, right? I mean, Nixon clearly tried to do it. There's even a scene with Reagan where Reagan and Jim Baker, and Paul Volcker writes about this, where he says, the president is ordering you to cut rates. So, it's just a thought experiment for everyone on this two-way. If the Fed cuts in July, which is their next rate meeting, which most people don't expect them to, but if they do you think Trump will dial back some of his criticism? I suspect yes, right? And so, but to the meta question, what does Trump want? Trump wants low interest rates and he wants to control the Fed. And the whole system of the Fed is that the president doesn't control it, because then markets will lose confidence in the Fed's sort of dual mandate and their ability to keep price pressures down and unemployment low. And Trump recognized this was that in March or April when he kind of gave that Sherman-esque statement where he said, I will not fire the Fed chair. Right. What's interesting to me about all the recent sort of ridicule and mockery from Trump towards Powell is that the market still seem to believe that April statement where he said he'll never fire him, even though he seems to be inching pretty close to it. Yeah. And it's not like he can reverse himself. He's never boxed in by what he said.
Right. Well, he's not. And I'm gonna go to something that Politico did that I was going to talk to Mark about, but equally excited to talk to you about. So I'm looking for that now. Just on the Fed. What do you know? Because this is the kind of thing you would think about, I think, about the prospect that Scott Bessent could simultaneously be Fed chair and Treasury Secretary. Is that, as we say in Germany, kosher?
That would be tested by the courts. I don't know the answer. I mean, the Fed.
What might it violate?
You're right. I mean, you can't. We kind of had this with Senator Daines here, who wanted to be both a senator and envoy to China, and it seems like he can't serve in 2 branches of government. I don't know when you accept a commission for. I mean, is there ever? And don't come at me with like, if Elihu Root had 2 jobs or something like that. But like, I don't know if you can actually have. You can have multiple titles, as Marco Rubio has.
Yes.
Right. But the Fed exists in its own sort of like.
Who would have standing to challenge that? If the Senate confirmed him, who would have standing? I don't know.
I mean, any bank that doesn't like the regulation from the Fed,
right.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Right? I mean, how does he regulate banks, which is one of the core things the Fed does now under Dodd-Frank, and then also make sure that they buy a bunch of bonds to keep interest rates low? I mean, it would just I don't, Elizabeth Warren sues. Warren sues. She finds standing some way.
And what do you know about Bessent's interest in the job of Fed chair, leaving Treasury? Do you know anything about that?
First rule of wanting to be Fed chair is never say you want to be a Fed chair, right? So, I mean, it's its own little fight club. There have been Treasury secretaries that have left to go be Fed, to be the chair of the Fed. I believe during the Carter administration, there was a Fed chair that left to go be Treasury secretary. I don't know which job holds more cachet. I don't know it seems like if you're a serious economist, well, Larry Summers had been Treasury Secretary, but really, really wanted Fed. Yeah. So I think for the serious economist, the Fed probably is a little bit more appealing.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Okay. So you mentioned this notion of wiggle room. Well, 2 things I generally shy away from are sports metaphors and watching the Sunday shows. But this Sunday I did because one thing I do shy towards is watching Scott Bessent on TV, because I like to watch like I'm a Wall Street bigwig and feel the vibes. So he was on one of the shows, and he said he was asked about the president's criticism or previous criticism of the Fed chair, and he said, or maybe the host said, I can't remember now. One of the people said, "There's two ways to work the ref. You can work the ref like Bobby Knight, and you can work the ref like Dean Smith." I think they said Dean Smith, but somebody like that. And the president's working it like Bobby Knight. And as you said, if he cuts rates in July, it's going to look great. Scott Bessent is the master of not answering. He was asked about cutting rates. He said, "Well, the chair doesn't cut rates, the board does." Just like he was asked, as the president talked to Premier Xi of China, and he said, "Well, I'm not the White House switchboard operator," as if that was responsive. Very clever guy.